Night City is a place filled with opportunity. It is the city of dreams. Living here, however, you ultimately have two choices. You can either live in peace as a nobody or go down for all time in a blaze of glory. For many individuals, the somewhat peaceful lifestyle is the one they choose. However, for the others, glory and more is what they seek. And if they were successful, they could become known as some of the best edgerunners or fixers in the whole of the city. For those that achieve more than most expect, they become Night City legends, with some being known as some of the best netrunners, some notorious rock stars, and even sadistic killing machines. In this video series, we will be exploring those legends that have become memorable all over Night City, and in today's video we will be looking into the life of the terrifying, heavily modified individual that will end you in a heartbeat and love doing it. This individual is the Arasaka bodyguard known as Adam Smasher, one of the most vicious killers in the city and world that people have ever seen, and many fear along the way. So who is Adam Smasher? What was his origin story? How did he get to look like this? And what was his inevitable fate? This is the story of the legends of Night City. This is the story behind the sadistic killing machine known as Adam Smasher. Adam Smasher was born and raised in New York City prior to the fall of the millennium. Nothing was ultimately that special about Smasher growing up, as not much is written down. To many, he was just seen as a regular punk that roamed the city, getting into trouble at every cost, and many people describing him as just a regular, worthless New York City mook. However, Smasher would eventually put his skills to use, and after his punk days of getting into trouble at every turn, he would go on to join the army, mainly due to the fact that the gang of punks he was in had been wiped out, leaving only him as the surviving member. Joining the army did not sit well with Smasher, however, as the idea of being regimented and taking orders didn't necessarily sit right with the punk inside of him. But for a good many years he donned the uniform and performed his duty and training. But that wasn't to last too long, as within the 2000s, after being in the forces for a few years, Smasher would be immediately discharged due to what was said to be bad conduct. And with him now leaving the army, it didn't take long before Smasher decided his next job was to use the skills he had just developed in his time in the army, and with that became a contract gunboy within New York City. This job was perfect for Smasher, as he was extremely sadistic and loved getting into fights with other individuals, with many saying he didn't have a squeamish bone in his body. But with Smasher's skills, he was able to get job after job and became well known throughout all of New York, gaining him enough money that he could bolster his personal arsenal, develop more gear, purchase questionable drugs, and also have what was said to be brutal one-night stands. Things were going well for Smasher, but like his army career, that was to all change extremely fast. On one mission Smasher was sent on, everything was going to plan, until suddenly he was hit by a couple of rockets, which was said to have turned him completely into meatloaf. With Smasher essentially taken out of this world completely, but somehow still alive, his gang that he was doing the job with grabbed what was remaining of his body that had been scattered all over the battlefield and quickly escorted him back to his home city. But this clearly wasn't the end for Smasher. His reputation within the city had become too high, and he was an extremely vital asset for many. Having him out of the game would be a complete waste of a good warrior, and because of it, one dubious corporate benefactor kept a close eye on what was happening to him and his body, and decided to get him involved in the situation. Reaching out to a suicidal Smasher, this corpo made a deal to get him back on his feet once again and working in the job he ultimately loved. This corpo offered him full corporate service in a full metal body, and if he refused to take this offer up, they would just simply put him out of his misery. He had no real choice. It was either suicide or accept their offer. But to many, the idea of being in a full metal body was seen as something that was losing all of your humanity. Everything that made you human would be stripped from you, and instead you were essentially just a corporate machine. But funnily enough, the idea of losing his humanity did not bother Smasher one bit, and without hesitation, he accepted the corpo's offer to become the Mechanical Man. Going into the 2010s and 7 years after the incident, Adam Smasher had now become the full mechanical cybernetic man that would be easily recognizable everywhere he went. Because of his new look as well as his new abilities on the battlefield, Smasher became even more renowned across the eastern seaboard, easily defeating 3 karate black belts in an instant. With him becoming more well known, he would accept every job he got offered, which was an insane amount, with the only jobs he refused being missions that were quite clearly suicide missions to get rid of him, or missions where he was going to be double-crossed. Smasher was quite aware of anyone trying to take him out of the game, and would shut down those missions in a heartbeat. For Smasher though, he had one request to all of his clients when accepting a mission. This was unlike any other merc's request, and if he did not get it, he would not accept the mission. This request was that collateral damage and civilian casualties are a must in everything he does, and with that, most job offers were accepted, allowing Smasher to kill anyone and destroy anything that got in his way without having to suffer the consequences. Ultimately, he would just get off of the idea of causing pain and destruction to people. But because of this way of life of his utter brutality, Smasher had many enemies along the way, with one being the other Night City legend that we will explore at a later date, the renowned hitman, or as they are also known, Solo, known as Morgan Blackhand. Both Smasher and Blackhand were not only rivals because of their similar roles, but Smasher also despised him due to his ongoing new outlook on life that metal is better than meat. And with Blackhand being majority human still, Smasher would always look at him in disgust and want to take him out of the equation. With Blackhand being his main goal, believing him to be a threat to his worldview, Smasher tried multiple times to challenge him in a one-on-one face-off to prove that metal was indeed better than meat. But at each opportunity, Blackhand would refuse any and all confrontation, knowing that would be exactly what Smasher wanted. But this only enraged the psychotic Smasher more, as he was now desperate to kill Morgan Blackhand, and with each snub, the fire raged on more and more. But despite this whole time throughout the 2010s, Smasher wasn't needed as much by the corporation that made him who he was today. But it was revealed that in fact the corporation that had brought him back from the dead and made him the cyborg that he was now was in fact a security branch linked to Arasaka themselves. But with not much going on with them not really needing him at the time, the branch allowed him to take on as many freelance roles as he could possibly think of. That was until the turn of the 2020s, when war was bucking its head between Militech and Arasaka. It was now time for the corporation to unleash his true abilities, and for Adam Smasher himself, it was time for him to embrace war and fulfill his bloodlust. It was time for the cyborg to enter the fourth corporate war. With Arasaka back in the equation for Smasher and war really kicking off between the two large corporations of Arasaka and Militech, he was finally brought back into the mix to serve as one of their main warriors on the battlefield. Smasher was delighted about this news as he just simply loved killing, and now he had an excuse to do it all of the time. He also relished the idea of this war because it finally gave him an excuse to battle his true rival, that being Morgan Blackhand, who during this war had been recruited by Militech. With the war really raging on and being a really serious focus for Arasaka, Smasher was given even more provisions to help in his battles, with one piece of gear being the die-only power armor conversion gear that when Smasher equipped it made him nearly unstoppable to all who tried to attack him. Smasher was loving warfare as mentioned, he just loved to kill people and really got his kicks from this whole event that was spreading all over the world. He was truly unstoppable in combat as he could just wipe out hundreds of Militech soldiers in a matter of seconds with a grin on his heavily messed up face. But once again, this was to all dramatically change in August 2023 when he was to be sent to the Arasaka Tower to defend from a small group of Militech Spec Ops who were on a mission to send a message to the whole of the Arasaka Corporation and Night City as well. As this Spec Ops team entered the tower, the crew consisting of Rogue, a fellow Borg who hated Arasaka with a passion known as Shaitan, the notorious rocker and activist Johnny Silverhand, and Smasher's main rival Morgan Blackhand, Silverhand was able to get into the tower and set the bomb up for detonation. Smasher and his crew of Arasaka soldiers would go on to ambush him and Blackhand's team as well. But instead of allowing Smasher to get his hands on his rival of Blackhand, Silverhand would go on to distract Smasher by shouting and firing at him, causing him to get injured in the process. But with this distraction, it allowed Shaitan to hold back Smasher and allow Blackhand to continue the job at hand. For Silverhand, however, Smasher had injured him massively, shooting off his arm in the process and leaving him unconscious on the floor. With Silverhand out of the fight, he was easy pickings for Arasaka as they captured his unconscious body with their medical team to take back to where Saburo Arasaka was located to interrogate him and also use for their new experimental version of the black program known as Soul Killer. For Smasher, however, he would continue to fight the Spec Ops team on the roof of the tower as he finally came face to face with Blackhand to finally test his theory that metal was better than meat. As the two started to fight, however, the nuclear bomb that Johnny had set up within the tower went off, blowing up the whole of the tower and killing 12,000 Arasaka employees in the process, and heavily damaging Smasher as well. Once again, the stars were aligned for Smasher as he survived the blast but was heavily damaged, with his body being retrieved by Arasaka once again to take back to their medical center to be worked on once again. Needing him to get back into the fight ASAP, Arasaka would replace all of the damaged flesh left on Smasher with machinery, turning him completely into a machine, with the only bit of flesh visible being on his heavily scarred face. After being assembled together once again, Smasher was tasked with taking care of Silverhand's dead body, as well as all of his possessions, which he would deposit underneath an oil field without any marker or anything, making it so that no one would remember him or be able to locate his final resting place. But after that task, Smasher disappeared from the public eye for many years, with no one really knowing exactly where he had gone or what his new task was. But with Arasaka's retreat from Night City, it was most likely that he followed them wherever they set themselves up. What was known was that during these years, Smasher met Machiko Arasaka, the daughter of his boss Kai Arasaka's 17-year-old daughter, and shortly after Machiko turned 18, would date her for a few years, with her bodyguards not taking a liking to him, frequently stating to Smasher that he needs to mind his manners around her. Smasher returned to the scene in 2045 when he would go on to discover there were more of Silverhand's possessions located within Night City and around the rest of the country, with one set of possessions being found within Samantha Stevens' garage. Finding these possessions, Smasher would go on to sell most of them as he deemed them to be of no use to him and easy money to gain for himself. However, he would go on to keep some of them, which would include Silverhand's Porsche and his signature gun, the Malorian Arms 3516. It became quite evident that Smasher was still a vital asset to Arasaka, and after all of these years, he had been extremely loyal to their cause. Because of these facts, Smasher would be assigned as the personal bodyguard of Saburo Arasaka's son, Yorinobu, and would be tasked with now executing some of the dirtiest work that Arasaka had ever tasked him with. Once again, Smasher would relish this opportunity and would gain even greater reputation for his expert management of loose ends. With this new role, Smasher would set himself up at the Ebanuki docks within Watson and would turn the area into his base of operations, with Jeremiah Grayson becoming one of his most loyal men and eventually his right-hand man for being extremely loyal and hard-working. With Grayson's promotion, Smasher would also go on to give him one of his most prized possessions, that being Johnny Silverhand's unique pistol to use as his own. For a couple of decades, a lot was quiet for Adam Smasher once again as he did cover-up work for Arasaka. However, in the year of 2076, Smasher's skills were needed once again as a new up-and-coming mercenary had stolen and was in possession of some experimental Arasaka technology that was known as the Cyber Skeleton. This merc would be known as David Martinez. Smasher was sent into Arasaka Tower to save the fellow Arasaka agent Douglas, who had been held hostage by David. Getting to where Douglas Douglas was, Smasher would engage with David in a series of insult exchanges before David became distracted by the fixer known as Faraday, who had awoken after David had incapacitated him moments before, as he was now being taken away by Trauma Team. With David now being distracted momentarily, Smasher used this opportunity to take him out and shot him in the gut, which majorly winded David and caused him to momentarily go cyber psycho, activating his time manipulation software known as Sandevistan. Smasher retaliated by doing the same, firing a missile that would go on to hit the back of David's exoskeleton with so much force that it ejected Faraday, who was still on the Trauma Team stretcher, out of the tower and died in the process. With David and Lucy escaping the tower, Smasher followed suit, jumping out of the tower and crushing another member of David's crew, Rebecca, in the process. This moment would absolutely devastate and anger David even more than he had before. But the battle between David's crew and Smasher would wage on, with Smasher taking out pretty much everyone in his way. David, who was in the process of turning cyber psycho, tried everything to take out Smasher, utilizing his Sandevistan tech, believing only he had it, but to his horror saw that Smasher also was able to use it to his advantage as well. Lucy also tried desperately to quick hack Smasher and disable his abilities, but it was no good, as it had little to no effect other than annoying him and eventually frying her cyber deck. As the battle raged on between Smasher and David, both of them used all of their cyber abilities and mechanical suits to get the upper hand on one another, but eventually it was Smasher who was the victor, as he would go on to rip apart David's suit and beat him to a pulp whilst in it defenseless. With David's suit not having any of its anti-grav devices, the suit was crumpling under its own weight and tearing it apart from David's body. Time was up for David, as Smasher would stand over him, stating that he had some fun after all, and stating that David could have been an interesting construct. But as the clock ran out for David, Smasher would execute him with a shot to the skull at point blank range. Once again, Smasher had proved that no one could stop him. Despite equal machinery and a determination, Smasher still had the upper hand, and if this truly incredible up-and-coming merc and his crew of other Edgerunners couldn't take out Smasher with their own technology, who really could? Smasher knew after this that he was unstoppable. However, that was to all change in the following year of 2077, where one more desperate merc trying to find a cure for Arasaka's damaged relic in their head would go on to encounter Smasher and test his skills once again. It was finally time for Smasher to meet the merc known as V, as well as fight against his once believed to be dead foe, Johnny Silverhand. Of 2077, Adam Smasher was still assigned as Yorinobu's personal bodyguard and was still valued as Arasaka's prized warrior. It was almost certain that every time Yorinobu ventured to his Konpeki Plaza penthouse to relax and sort out business, Smasher would also attend to make sure he scared the fellow guests staying there. One example being the person known as Evelyn Parker, who would regularly visit Yorinobu to satisfy his needs. All looked like it would be in order within Night City, until one day, two fellow mercs of V and Jackie Wells would conduct a heist on the penthouse to steal an Arasaka piece of technology known as the Relic, which was pieced together by Evelyn Parker, Dexter DeShawn, and T-Bug. Unaware to the young mercs in the process of the heist, Yorinobu was to be visited by his father, Saburo, to talk about their family's future, which would trap V and Jackie in the same room as them. It is said that whilst V and Jackie were trapped in the aircon system watching over the events taking place, that Smasher himself, utilizing his many pieces of technology such as thermograph vision, could see the two mercs and would stare at them to see what they were doing, but for some reason would not say anything to his employers, maybe seeing it as an opportunity to place blame for Yorinobu's actions on them, allowing him to have some more fun. However, before the father and son spoke to one another, Smasher and Goro Takemura would leave the room to give them space, which quickly led to Yorinobu killing his father in cold blood. As the penthouse suddenly went into lockdown, V and Jackie Wells would desperately try to escape as Smasher would chase them down, trying to outright destroy their Delamain taxi. But unfortunately for Smasher, he was unsuccessful as V would survive the failed heist to live another day. With Yorinobu becoming the new CEO of Arasaka after his father's supposed poisoning, Smasher was then promoted to head of security within the whole of the corporation. With him now in charge of protecting all of the Arasaka members, Sandayu Oda would go on to warn Smasher that during the memorial parade for Saburo, Yorinobu's sister, Hanako Arasaka, would be the target, with the perpetrators trying desperately to sabotage her and harm her. But Smasher did not see why he should care and brushed off this warning from Oda, accusing them of disobeying Yorinobu, which would lead to Oda questioning Smasher's true intentions. Eventually, Oda's suspicions became correct as V, with the help of Takemura, captured and convinced Hanako that Yorinobu was responsible for the death of her father. But with this capture, Smasher launched an Arasaka strike team to supposedly rescue Hanako and also to kill anyone in the area. But eventually Smasher's time would come to an end as he would finally come face to face with V, who had developed themselves over their journey, trying to find a solution to their relic problem. Killing Smasher once and for all was a great statement all over Night City that Arasaka was without its most valuable warrior who had caused so much harm all over. And on top of that, with Smasher out of the way, Johnny Silverhand had finally gotten his revenge for what he had done to him back in 2023. Smasher is a true Night City legend, but not for good reasons. His impact on the world was dramatic as he was one of the coldest, deadliest, and sadistic killers anyone had ever seen, and maybe will ever see again. Becoming a Borg, Smasher would lose all of his humanity, but that never seemed to matter to him, as for him, that made him better for what he needed to be. With him out of the picture, maybe Night City will be a much safer place, and maybe Arasaka will lose a bit more of their power, as they won't have him to do their dirty work anymore. But thanks to Smasher, we have also lost many of the other legends of Night City, such as Rebecca, David Martinez, and Jackie Wells. Will Arasaka ever bring him back, making him even more machine, if that's even physically possible? Or has Adam Smasher finally breathed his last breath? Only time can really tell. But for now, this has been the story of the legend of Night City, the sadistic killing machine known as Adam Smasher. And that is the first legend from Night City, with many more to come soon. What did you think of Adam Smasher? Did you like his character, and what did you think of his origin story? Let me know in the comments below. I want to say a huge thank you to you for watching this video, as well as my amazing patrons who allow me to make videos like this, including our small fishes, my big fishes Christopher, Last Persona User, and Arto Creme, my YouTube channel Wise Ones, Fiery Italian, Ico the Wolf, and Sith Lord 906, my sharks Wellsuch Gaming and Jason X117, and my Megalodons Sinus, Jacob Garcia, and Chernobyl Stalker. If you also want to support this channel, you can find the link in the description below, but if not, please do leave a like, check out my other lore videos, leave a subscribe if you haven't already, support me through buying yourself a tub of G Fuel with my link, and why not leave a nice comment to help get this video out there. But that is all for now, stay safe out there, and see you all in the next one. Cheers.